Alright, what I want to talk about now is air conditioning split systems. The split systems here in Australia are an incredibly popular way of air conditioning, mainly for cooling, but obviously they can also be used for heating. So I just wanted to talk through what these systems are all about and cleaning. This is a big section on how important it is to clean these systems. So it's not going to be a big, fat, boring thing about a history of split systems and real technical details. Just a brief overview, mainly then about how important it is to clean and the condition of these systems and how poorly they can affect the indoor air quality. So let's have a look. On this first photograph, it's just showing you what I mean by split system, so that we're talking real layman terms. Everyone knows what we're talking about. So they call it a split system because there's an outdoor unit. This is a photo of what the outdoor unit looks like. And then there's an indoor unit in the next photograph that shows us what we all sort of know inside these wall-mounted indoor units. Now, these two units are linked, obviously. But what's important to know that many won't know and many will know, but the average layman wouldn't know, is that there is no fresh air intake with this system. It's a closed system. So the air is drawn in from inside your home and it is recirculated between these two units. And so the cooling and the heating happens. When you look at that outside unit, don't think that outdoor air is coming in to that outside unit and giving you fresh outdoor air. That never happens. It's a recirculating closed system. So that's important to know. That's why it's important to keep it really clean, because you're never getting outdoor air. The next photo just shows you that if you lift up the flap or the front cover, if you will, of the system, you'll see that there are filters under that. Now these filters, when we shine a torch on them, you can see how clean and clear they are. This is an old system, but it's nice and clean. That's what filters should look like when they are very nice and clean. And there are two of them generally on the front that you can lift off and take off. But that's what that looks like on the front. Many people have never even lifted that front cover before. So it's just to show you there are filters under that cover, and those filters really should be cleaned on a regular basis. They're just there to generally protect the motor. So they'll get laden in dust, that's their job, but you need to just wipe that off or vacuum them off or whatever you want to do, but get them cleaned on a regular basis. Know that they're there, basically. Once you lift those filters off, behind them you'll see a coil. So that's the next photo showing you what the coil looks like. This is the right-hand side, just close to the controls and so on. But all of that metal is the coil of the system, which again also needs cleaning. If we go into the next photograph, you'll see that below that coil, what we're pointing to there is the drain pan. So what happens here is that often cooling occurs by stripping moisture out of the air. So there will be condensation that takes place, and this is a condensate drain pan. So the water that's taken out of the air then goes into this drain pan, that flat sort of black section that you can see there. It's a pan, there's water that sits inside there. It's important that when we've got water sitting around, there can be mold issues. So it's important that that drain pan is drained. And is cleaned on a regular basis, because that's where we can get some nastiness in there. From that drain pan, you can see where we're pointing to now, there's a drain pipe. So water is generally drained out of that drain pipe. Water is generally drained out of the drain pan through the drain pipe to the exterior. And so that water then is constantly, when it's in use, that water is constantly dripping out of the drain pipe. And that's how it gets rid of the water. So if we follow that drain pipe to the outside, this is a photograph of what it should look like outside. According to code, this water must be drained into stormwater drainage. So you can see what we've done here. It's coming out of the building, that's the wall, coming out of the building, couple of little elbows to then put it into and plumb it into a stormwater downpipe and into the stormwater drainage system. So this goes into the same system as the water from your roof and through all the stormwater drainage. That's what it should look like. Unfortunately, that's a fairly rare site. That's how we've done it on this project and in our home. And you can see how it is done straight into stormwater drainage. I'd like to say, in all of the experience I've had, whenever there's split systems, 95% of the time it does not look like that. Most of the time you will find a system like this. This is just showing, this is actually a hydronic system, not air conditioning, but it's a similar condensate drain pipe. Runs down the wall and is simply allowed to just drain onto the wall. In fact, there's seldom even that little elbow at the bottom, as you can see in this photograph. There's an elbow to point it away from the wall. It often doesn't have that elbow and it drips onto the wall itself. But you can see even when it has an elbow, you'd be surprised how much moisture comes from this system. So there is water just draining up against the building and up against the walls. This is what we're trying to avoid. It must go into stormwater drainage system, but unfortunately that's what it looks like in most homes. This was a home that's just a recent build in 2020, a new build, and that's how it's done. So if we then go on to the next set of photos, I just want to show you what it looks like when it's not clean. If we open the front cover of an air conditioning system, these are photographs I've taken of jobs I've been on and some even from clinics. Look at those filters on this first photo. That is what it looks like when they're not cleaned, and they're years and years old. And there are carpets and you're in an area there's cars and trucks and so on. Those filters are absolutely caked. That puts strain on the system, enormous amount of strain, and can't work properly. So that is so dusty. Those filters need to be removed. They need to be cleaned, but that's what it looks like. When you go on to the next photograph, you'll see that if we look, this is a photograph, tricky to describe, but it's basically looking at the barrel fan. If we look through the louvers, you'll see in our split system, we've got the big main system, we have the cover we've lifted up. Underneath that, there are the louvers where all the air blows out. Now we're now looking through those louvers at the back of what we call the barrel fan or the blower fan, or it's called many different things. But basically it's a long piece that looks like a barrel. That's that black section at the back of the white wall. So we're looking through the fins down into the back, and this barrel fan is what spins around and blows the air into the room. Now you can see there's significant mold growth on the back of the unit there. All of that green and black moldy spotting is all mold growth, and it's all over the barrel fan as well. So that's what it looks like if you neglect it and just don't have a look. They are a massive source of mold in an indoor environment, and to distribute it, you can imagine as that barrel fan is spinning around, blowing all of this mold around into the indoor environment. And this is not uncommon. Yes, this is an extreme case, we're trying to show you a bad case, but it's not that uncommon. It's showing an extreme case as in what it can get to in terms of mold and how extreme it can get in there, but it's not uncommon. So that's what mold looks like behind those louvers. That's exactly where the air comes out. This is a better shot of the barrel fan, even going more inside, and you can see on that barrel fan how there's white caking of dust, and there's mold spotting all over the white cover, and there'll be mold all over that barrel fan. This is a huge issue and a massive mold source, and why these units need to be looked at and why they need to be cleaned. So let's get into the cleaning and see what's involved in cleaning these units and keeping them clean, because it's critical in terms of your indoor environment, particularly in damp and moist environments like up in Queensland, Sydney many of the time. If you have mold and moisture, or you have moisture laden air, these air conditioning systems are are going to get like this fairly quickly if you do not clean them on a regular basis. So let's see how that's done. All right, so I'm here with Vince from Clean Fresh Air. Welcome, Vince, to Torquay.
Thank you, Ralph. Pleasure to be here with you.
Good. So we've Lordy and Vince from Clean Fresh Air are the good people in the industry, in my opinion. We're here going to clean the split air conditioning system that we have chosen to keep in this particular house, in this project. So yeah, we're going to see how we basically clean that unit from scratch. Ours is not particularly dirty, but you can get some really horrible looking ones, people who depend on it for a lot of heating and cooling. But how do we start the process in terms of the clean of a system?
Oh, Ralph, the process starts with the obviously turning the unit on and testing and make sure that it's working.
Yeah.
For starters.
Yeah.
And then we find the isolation switch, which turns all the power off to the unit before we go any further, and also we either padlock or zip tie the isolation switch so it's not turned on accidentally while we're cleaning. Okay. And then the process is we start dismantling the outer casing, testing the wires on the unit, so as again we make sure that there's no hidden power coming to the unit.
Yeah.
And then the process from there is dismantling all the outer casing, the filters, taking it all outside to be washed with the solution and then rinsed with a pressure cleaner. And then once we do that, we start preparing the unit for a wash, which includes covering all the electricals with a special tape that eliminates moisture from going into the unit.
Yeah.
And then we put the catchment bag underneath the unit and around the unit, so as once we start the washing, any water goes into the drum which collects all the washdown material.
Yeah.
And then from there we start with the solution spraying. So once we've sprayed all the coils, the back of the unit, all the drain pan, we make sure we spray the solution into the drainage that goes to the outside of the unit.
Yes.
So just in case it's blocked up or anything is major wrong.
Is that condensation?
The conduit that goes through the unit and outside.
Yep.
And then normally we let that sit for probably about 10 minutes to let it dwell, so the solution takes hold of any mould or any dust, or particularly mould that's building up on the unit.
Yeah, and that I saw you use the Abode mould control product, and that's basically, I mean, there are a few ingredients, but basically what, about 8% hydrogen peroxide that's doing most of the work?
That's correct. We've made that, we've had that made specially with the 8% hydrogen peroxide.
Yep.
So it deals with the mould, if there's any mould in the unit that's building up.
Yeah.
And that normally, again, we let that dwell for about 10 minutes.
Yep.
And then of course we've got a low pressure cleaner that we start from the top of the unit and work our way across the unit to make sure that it's all coming down to the drain pan, and then obviously it's all flushed out through the drain pan, and also whatever is coming out of the unit gets collected in the catchment bag and goes into the drum that we can obviously dispense off.
So I can imagine there'd be some pretty nasty looking liquids sometimes.
Yeah, there's been some really colourful mixtures there, but you actually notice all the chunks of mould and things that start to come out.
That are sitting in there.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting during the process, watching it all and seeing what's involved. There are a number of ways I'd imagine that you could do this, and seeing the amount of work involved in stripping the whole thing apart, how long that takes. It's almost, to me, looks like these things aren't made to put apart and be cleaned and put back together, because most of the time is the putting apart and the putting back together.
That's correct.
But in doing it, you've taken all these individual parts off, sprayed them outside, low pressure hosed them outside, clean and spotless, the pre-filters, and then you've gone and done the coil as well as the barrel fan. Is that right?
The barrel fan and all the drain pan, which is where most of the condensation and dust sits if it's not draining properly, which again that allows the mould to start to create in the unit, and also the back wall of the unit, which again the dust is where all it collects, and again the condensation will create the mould issues.
Yeah, because as soon as you have condensation or moisture and then dust, the moisture will obviously, mould feeds off dust, and all it needs is food and water, and you've given them both in a nice little unventilated spot behind it. So yeah, getting in and doing that amount, for me it was just quite eye-opening seeing how long it takes. I would imagine you come in, you do a bit of a spray, and you're out, and these are quick and easy things, but this is far from it.
It's a very thorough service, and again, we're only told by the manufacturers to clean the filters, but unfortunately with this day and age where there's a lot of effective with people with allergies to mould and dust, asthma and things, we're not taught to get into the unit as best to eliminate all that. So we've taken that on board, and it is a lengthy process. Very satisfying once we've initiated the process and seen the results. But people have a sense of it shouldn't take that long. But as you've seen the process, when they see the process and the outcome of the result, more than happy with, And for us, it's very fruitful because we know we've delivered a great service to people that may have allergies to the asthma or the mould.
In what I see in commercial applications and offices and even clinics and so on, as well as residential properties, obviously the more you use it, there are a lot of people who depend on these split systems and have 3 or 4 in a house, or even more, a number in every office and so on. No one looks at it. No one ever looks at them, no one opens them, no one thinks about them. They just press the button for on, press the button for off, and go, oh, this thing's 6-7 years old.
That's right.
Seeing you pull it apart and seeing how many crevices and little areas behind everywhere where dust and mould and condensation and drip, so much is going on in that one unit.
Absolutely.
To then go through and see it thoroughly cleaned, but it can take, over here, it took 2 hours to do one. So to do it properly, like in most things, it takes time.
It does take time, Raf, and the thing is that people, again, depending on the circumstance, until they actually see it, it's very eye-opening how the build-up is created over so many years. And as you just mentioned, we're not able to see and look at the things and say, well, we just push the button, it operates. But again, it becomes down to the age of the unit, the length of time where it hasn't been looked at, and mainly we're taught to just do the filters. That's pretty much what we're basically told.
And the filters, they look like, in my experience of filters, they look like we call them rock stoppers, like they're just there to stop the very big stuff, mainly to protect the unit, not for indoor air quality control or anything. Those are just literally, and I often see them absolutely caked in dust.
We've come across numerous ones that I don't know how the unit survives, because it's like the lungs of the unit. If your lungs are blocked, it just doesn't progress very well, and it also there's a big strain on the actual motor and the barrel fan to try and create what it should be creating.
And do what it's supposed to do.
Absolutely.
I've found that for a lot of people, and a lot of people might not know this, that am I correct in saying these split systems, they don't draw any outdoor air at all?
No.
So they are completely closed systems. So you're taking your indoor environment, pulling it into the unit, and obviously it has an outdoor unit to it as well. But basically between those two, just correct me anyway if I'm incorrect. But basically this whole system keeps recirculating your indoor
air quality, and the condenser outside is mainly for the refrigerant to change whether it's going through heating or cooling system.
So
that's where all your refrigerant goes through,
Okay.
and there's no air intake from that because it's a sealed unit where just the gases run through to the coils in the actual split unit inside.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the area that the indoor air quality of these units is very important, because, as you said, depending on people's circumstances where they have maybe a lot of carpet, where it draws a lot of dust and pollutants from the carpet, and that's being circulated inside. So hence checking the filters every month to 2 months or 3 months is very important, so as you're sustaining the quality of the unit with the air circulation.
As well.
And again, a lot of people have as you pointed out, they use them for heating and cooling. So we suggest that they have them serviced or have them cleaned, sanitised in between each season, so as you're always having that unit working at its maximum level.
At its capacity. I've found people often don't realise in indoor air quality, what will land up in that unit, because it's only drawing from indoor air, is often there are flimsy range hoods or extractor fans above kitchens, so all your cooking stuff tends to fly around, skin cells from your body, clothing, all the dust, the rug, the mould from the condensation. You get a soup of all this stuff being drawn into the system, and then being asked to heat and cool and blow out clean air through this very, very flimsy filter that's really there to protect the system, not provide you with air quality. And a lot of people depend on this system for heating and cooling. So I think it's critical that it's done, and done properly, in the way that you do it.
And as